What's up, Flaniverse? Sunday Night Football is here. We've got the Packers at the Cowboys. Should be I don't know if it'll be a fun game. I don't want to say it's going to be a fun game because I'm not super confident that it's going to be a fun game. I think the Packers, unfortunately, have a really good defense. I'm not sure if we're going to see much fireworks from the Cowboys. I'm hoping the Cowboys can keep it close, but I'm not totally confident in it. Yes, Ben Rortvet is a must-have baseball player in your lineups tonight. Let's get it indeed. Thanks for the reminder, Dan. Please do hit the like while you're coming in. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're not already subscribed. Trying to get to 6,000 subscribers by the end of the NFL season. Could use any help that I can get. So I would appreciate if you would subscribe to the channel. How's everybody doing today? Anybody winning anything? I am not winning anything. Kind of a chalk smash day. Some of it better than others for me, but generally not winning a ton today, or I should say I'm losing money today. But let's get into it. We're going to be going as usual, position by position: quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, defenses, kickers. I'll take any questions you have as we go. Take them at the end as well, and then I'll be building my lineups with Run the Sims while on the stream. All right, let's get into it. Let's start with the quarterbacks. Appreciate all of you being here. Jordan Love, 10,000, projected for 53% flex ownership, 15% captain ownership. I think it's probably justified. Not my favorite captain play on the slate, but he is one of my favorite captain plays on the slate. I think I'm kind of expecting the Packers to trounce the Cowboys in Dallas here. Hoping I'm wrong, but just looking at the defensive matchups, and we've got no CeeDee Lamb today, it is the best possible matchup for quarterbacks so far on the season. Quarterbacks just absolutely crushing Dallas through the air. I think this sets up really well for Jordan Love. So I'm going to take whatever Jordan Love I get. He's not, I guess, my biggest priority, so it's possible that I don't end up too much over the field here at 68% total ownership, but he's one of my biggest priorities. So I would anticipate that I end up at or maybe even above the field on Jordan Love. I think it's just a great spot here. We can pull up schedule adjusted, pass rate over expectation for the Packers. And this is actually one of the reasons that I'm not as high on Jordan Love. One of the reasons that he's not my biggest priority is Packers preferring to run the ball, slightly below average in terms of pass rate over expectation, 21st in the NFL. So given that they just want to run the ball, and I think they're going to be able to run the ball, he's not my biggest priority, but he is a priority. I think he looks great. As far as stacking up Jordan Love, I always want him to be stacked regardless of where he is in my lineup. If I have him in the captain spot, I would like him to be multi-stacked. He does not run much. I think he averages 6 or so rush yards per game. I don't remember the exact number, but it's single digits. Not much of a runner. I don't expect him to run much, so I would like him to be stacked up regardless of where he is in the lineup. On the other side, we have Dak Prescott. Again, no CeeDee Lamb for the Cowboys. Dak projected for 46% flex ownership, 11% captain ownership. I like him less. I like him less than Jordan Love, and it really just comes down to the matchup. Again, best possible matchup for the Packers quarterback against Dallas. Worst possible matchup for quarterbacks against Green Bay. Green Bay's defense just looks unstoppable right now. Although they did lose to the Browns, that was kind of a fluky game last week. I think it's a tough spot for Dak, particularly without CeeDee Lamb. I anticipate that I'll probably end up under the field on Dak Prescott if he's getting 57% ownership. I'm just going to lean into the players that have great matchups, and we have some really nice spend ups. So I think, if Dak were projected to be like super low owned, then I would lean into it and kind of hope like, hey, I'm going to play the contrarian stack. We're not really seeing that they're going to be all that contrarian here. Dak 57% total ownership, not enough to really get me excited about playing those Cowboy stacks. I want to see if it's similar at RG. Yeah, they've got, so this is the first thing that I looked at. So I'm looking at the Run the Sims. I'm like, these actually look more reasonable, maybe more in line with what I think is reasonable. RG has Dak at 65%. Maybe I need to reset this. That seems really high. You do need to play players from both sides of the game. So somebody from Dallas, there are going to be people playing the Cowboys. America's team, maybe do they get extra ownership because they're America's team? They only have Dak at 5% captain ownership, but yeah, they've got him at 65% ownership. or sorry, yeah, flex ownership. That seems kind of nuts to me. At those numbers, I definitely want to be well under the field. Even at these numbers, 40, 46, and 11, I anticipate that I'll end up a little bit under the field as I just prioritize elsewhere. I think he's a fine play. Just I think there are other spend ups that I prefer over Dak Prescott. It's a really tough matchup. If you play Dak, I want him to be stacked up. If he's in the captain spot, I want him to be multiple stacked with multiple pass catchers. Again, just does not run all that much. I think that's all I really have to say about the quarterbacks. Let's move on to the running backs. All right. Running backs, it all starts with Josh Jacobs, who I think probably is my biggest priority on the slate. Jacobs is 10,800. They prioritize running the ball. It's a fantastic matchup. Here we'll go. Running backs. It is the sixth best matchup for running backs against Dallas. Again, the pass rate over expectation is their 21st, meaning that they run a little bit more. They're more inclined to run. That is what they want to be doing. Josh Jacobs' workload has been really strong. I'll bring up the bell cow report. Through 3 games, 58 carries, so just over 19 carries per game for Josh Jacobs, 10 targets, more than 3 targets per game on 45.5% route participation. Just the very clear bell cow for the Packers. I think this is a spot where they should be able to do whatever they want to do, and I think they want to run the ball. So I like Jacobs quite a bit. I don't like him quite as much at 28% captain ownership, 39% flex ownership. RG has him at 26% flex ownership. So again, these are the numbers that I was looking at as I formed my opinions. Now he's getting more ownership at Run the Sims. He probably comes in somewhere in between those numbers. I do think that we have north of 20% Josh Jacobs captain. I think he is probably my favorite captain. Like if I make one lineup, he might be my first, maybe my second captain into the lineup. But obviously the ownership makes a pretty big difference here. We're seeing a disparity in ownership projections across this game. So at these numbers, these are not that far off from where I want to be. I think that I still want to have more than this overall. I don't think I want to have more than 28% Josh Jacobs at captain necessarily. But overall, I think this is 67% total ownership. I think I actually want to be higher than that on Josh Jacobs. He is a pretty big priority for me. Again, just a great matchup, big spread in the game. 26.5 to 20 is the implied team total, 6.5 point spread here. I've seen a larger spread elsewhere. Yeah, Josh Jacobs just pretty big priority for me. Both in the captain and in the flex. Probably going to be my highest owned player overall. Other than Josh Jacobs, we have Emmanuel Wilson and Chris Brooks. I think Wilson is the bigger priority of the two. Projects just very slightly better here. Again, if we look at the bell cow report, Chris Brooks just one carry on the season for Chris Brooks, 7 for Emmanuel Wilson. Brooks does have 5 targets on 16% route participation. So I guess when you factor in the targets, he's running more routes, seeing more targets. Maybe closer than I'm giving it credit for. I think they're not that far off in terms of plays. I do think it would be Emmanuel Wilson has the better contingent upside. So both in terms of if there were an injury to Josh Jacobs, I think Emmanuel Wilson gets the first crack at the running work, and then also in a blowout, I think it'd be more likely to be Emmanuel Wilson. But Brooks does have that passing game work. So I guess there's pros and cons to each. Neither of them like a huge priority, but at ownership, I mean, we're getting 1% on each of them. I do want to make sure that I have some exposure to both of them in my player pool. So I actually think that I'll probably end up overweight on both Chris Brooks and Emmanuel Wilson. We do have a lot of pretty strong value here, so not by a lot. And RG actually has them at 2 and 2.5% ownership, so a little bit higher there. That if I get to 3% on both, I think that's good enough for me. Not like huge priorities. They're in most game scripts not going to have a huge workload. Maybe 4 or 5%, I guess, just because I do think this game could like get out of hand. I think it could be the Packers just absolutely crush, and they're running out the clock in the fourth quarter. I've said this before; it doesn't actually happen as often as I think it will on these showdown slates. These end up being pretty competitive games a lot of the time, but would not be surprising to me at all if this ends up being not a very competitive game, and we end up seeing these backup running backs come in late. So I like them quite a bit. I think you can play 2 running backs from the Packers in your lineup, no problem. No issue playing multiple, even if you have Josh Jacobs in the captain spot. No issue with it at all. All right. Appreciate you, Sammy. On the other side, it's a little bit tougher. So Javonte Williams, 37% flex ownership, 9% captain ownership. I think you're going to find that generally, my opinion in this game is going to be a lot of fading expensive Cowboys, because I just think they're going to struggle offensively. I think that's kind of what we've seen against this Packers defense. I'm not sure we have any reason to think the Cowboys are going to be better, especially with their best player out. So I think I'm probably going to come in underweight on Javonte Williams. Now, again, it's 37 and 9 here. If we look elsewhere, 25% projected flex ownership here at RG. And where is he in the captain? Oh, about 10% there. Yeah, those are numbers. So Run the Sims does have him higher in the flex. But in general, I think I am going to end up underweight on Javonte. The workload has been kind of undeniable. He's had a much better workload than I think most of us anticipated coming into the year. He does have 50 expected fantasy points through 3 games, so just under 17 per game. He has 43 carries and 14 targets on 56.8% route participation. That's the part that kind of surprised me. I didn't think Javonte would be this involved in the passing game. I guess he was somewhat on the Broncos, so maybe I shouldn't be that surprised. But surprised me a little bit how much he is involved in the passing game. Ultimately, in a better matchup, I'd be willing to play Javonte. I think he has an awesome workload. I think that he's looked really good this year. And to be clear, when I say I am willing to play Javonte, but I think I'm going to be underweight to the field. I think I'll have Javonte in under 50% of my lineups. I actually don't mind him at captain as much, but he's getting 9 and 10% projected captain ownership. I suspect I'll be underweight there, just not a priority relative to some of the Packers players that I really like. So ultimately, I think I end up underweight on Javonte Williams because he's just a little bit too expensive if you think that the game is going to be a struggle for the Cowboys offensively, which is kind of what I'm expecting. Maybe they'll surprise me, but that is the way that I'm playing the game. Is the Cowboys are going to struggle somewhat offensively, so I'd rather lean in on the Packers' more expensive players. And because you have to play, some Cowboys, I'm going to be more inclined to play some of their cheaper options, including Miles Sanders. I think is kind of a fine play here at 3,000. Fine workload, obviously nothing compared to Javonte Williams, but he does have 18 carries through 3 games. He's a little bit more explosive, I would say, than Javonte Williams, more likely to rip off a 40, 50-yard touchdown run. 6 targets on 12.9% route participation. I think a lot of reason to like Miles Sanders at this price tag. Now, again, it is the worst possible matchup for running backs, so not like awesome. I'm not going to go overboard on Miles Sanders, but I think that he is a fine play at 3,000. If I get to about 10%, I think that's about where I'd like to be. I'm just realizing that I have not looked at inactives for this game. Is Jadon Blue? I assume he's inactive, but I didn't actually look it up before I started, which is the reason for when I start this, is because I want to have time to look up inactives. So let me do that real quick. All right, we've got the full inactives in one screenshot. It looks like Jadon Blue is inactive. Nobody else that is a surprise here. On the Packers side, nobody that I was considering playing. So yeah, we look good from inactives. Just wanted to make sure that Jadon Blue is actually inactive, and he is. So I think Miles Sanders at 3,000, pretty strong play. Hunter Lipke actually kind of interesting also at no ownership. And I actually Miles Sanders 10% here. Where does RG have Miles Sanders? That's captain. They go on 8%, so they have even lower ownership. I think he's fine at around like 10%. Not a huge priority, but I think that is a fine number for Miles Sanders. And then Hunter Lipke, 1% projected ownership at 400. I think is somebody that I'm going to have some exposure to. Not a huge priority. Again, we can look at the bell cow report. 0 carries so far in the year, 0 targets so far in the year. In years past, they've used him a little bit more. I do like some of the coach speak on Lipke has been a little bit more promising, suggesting they can play him at tight end, they can play him at running back. And I think that was just this week. Let me double check Coach Week Index. Last year, I guess just 12 carries. He had 15 targets on the season last year, 23% route participation. So they've been using him a little bit less. I guess maybe they like Javonte Williams better than they like Rico Dowdle last year. But let me read off the quote real quick on Hunter Lipke. See if you guys find it more interesting than I do. I mean, I think it's pretty interesting. So this is the 24th. So it was this week. Head coach Brian Schottenheimer said, Hunter Lipke is the perfect Swiss pocket knife. He can play fullback. He can run the ball. He can play tight end. He probably won't play that many snaps for us. Him playing 20 snaps is probably a good number you'd want to get for him. So he's never going to be like a bell cow. He's never going to get a ton of work, but 20 snaps, if they're going to use him occasionally at tight end, use him as a Swiss pocket knife. It's kind of interesting to me at 400 and zero ownership. If there's the possibility that they're just going to, in the red zone play Hunter Lipke a random snap at tight end, sort of interesting to me. Not a huge priority by any means, but somebody I'd want to have 2% of, maybe just in case, because they were using Kevontae Turpin similarly over the summer. They were saying, hey, we can use him all over the field. We want to use him all over the field, and they've actually done it in the season. So I kind of think that they mean it, that they might actually give him a rare snap at tight end or something. He's only 400, so I think he's viable, but not a priority by any means. Viable in a 150 set. I probably wouldn't get there in a 20 lineup set. I probably would like 50s, where I'd start to get a couple of shares of Hunter Lipke. Probably would not make just if I play 20 lineups. I don't think I'd get there. Okay, so that's it as far as running backs go. Move on to wide receivers. Rant's not sold on Hunter Lipke. Rather play Green Bay backup running back. Oh yeah, backup. I thought you said backup quarterback. I was misreading that. Yeah, I agree with that. I would probably rather play not than Miles Sanders, but then Hunter Lipke. Yes. Okay. Actually, maybe Miles Sanders also, just because of the game script I'm expecting. It's close there though. Wide receivers on the Packers side are going to look good here. Again, no Jaden Reed. So we've got pretty fair prices on the Packers receivers. And let me pull up the advanced receiving page and the route participation page. All right, so we'll start by looking at the route participation. So last week was the first week that we did not have Jaden Reed. Actually, in week 2, he got hurt in game, just 5.9% route participation. That's right. He had the almost touchdown where he got hurt right in the first quarter. That was kind of brutal. But so we have kind of a 2-game sample size here of no Jaden Reed. And this is what we've seen. We've seen Romeo Doubs 76.5% to 84% route participation. Matthew Golden 65% to 71%. Dontavian Wicks 65% and 61% in those 2 games. Malik Heath 21% and 13%. Savion Williams 12% and 10% in those 2 games. So we've got Doubs, Golden, Wicks running 60+% of the routes as the starting receivers for the Packers. Wicks is just 4,000. So Wicks stands out as a pretty great value here. Projected for 40% ownership. That is more again than I'd seen elsewhere. Let's see what RG has him at. They've got him at 25%. So I really like him at 25% flex ownership. Once he gets to, if he gets to 40, I'm not going to like that quite as much. So it is kind of a balancing act of like which ownership do you trust? Because that's really going to affect how much I want to play of Wicks. But I think he's just objectively a strong value play in a great matchup here. Some nice coach speak recently for Wicks just on the 25th. Dontavian Wicks, this is from offense coordinator Adam Stenovich. Dontavian Wicks is playing with confidence. He's running great routes. He's blocking. He's doing everything we ask. I'm excited to see the plays that he's going to make as the season unfolds. He's stepped up and he's done a great job. Lot of positive coach speak for Wicks over the past couple of weeks. Again, last week, Wicks is a very elite route runner. He went through some ups and downs last year with drops, but he was doing a very good job catching the ball and running through the ball in OTAs and camp this year. The drops seem to be better this year. Like he's not having a real issue with drops like he has in the past. So I think Wicks at 4,000, if he's running 65% of the routes or so, pretty nice value against this Cowboys defense where they should have some success. Maybe they're going to run the ball so much that the receivers don't get there, but I think probably one of them at least will. And I think Wicks is a pretty good bet here. Dobbs at 6,400, projected for 27 and 3% ownership. Again, he's the one that is running the most routes, 77%, 84% for Dobbs. We can look at let's just look at. No, I guess we've got most of the season. Two of the 3 games they have not had Jaden Reed. Kind of the one thing you don't love is none of them really getting a ton of targets through 3 games. Dobbs just 11 targets through 3 games on his 76% route participation. Again, I think it's a great matchup. One of them is probably going to hit at least. So I do think I'm going to be mixing and matching the Packers receivers. Dobbs at 27 and 3% ownership. I actually think that's a pretty strong. I think all 3 of them are actually fairly strong captain plays at low ownership. Not again, like I prefer other players that they're not like biggest priorities, but I do think I'd like to be overweight and maybe get to 5% each of Wicks, Dobbs, and Golden. I think they're relatively strong captain plays. It is a little bit hard to distinguish like what order you would like them in, especially when you look at the ownership being this close. Because Wicks is the one that I'm most inclined to get over the field on because of the price tag and because I really like some of the spend up options. But they're coming in at relatively, I mean, RG has it Dobbs at 24, Golden at 23, and Wicks at I think 25. So when they're all at the same ownership, I'm just going to lean in on Wicks at 4,000. It's a little bit of a tougher equation for me when we've got Wicks at 40% ownership here. I kind of think the 40% is going to be closer to accurate, in which case I'm probably not going to be too far over the field there. I do like the captain play better. Again, at 2% captain ownership, that's the play where I'd want to be over the field. I probably come in a little bit under the field in the flex, and maybe it's a wash and end up with 42%. It's just 5% at captain and 37% at flex, something like that is where I'd like to be. Dobbs, I like these numbers. I would like to be over the field there as well. Kind of nice mid-range prices. And then Golden we haven't really seen it from Golden yet, but he's come so close so many times this year that I still think he's a pretty strong play at 7,000 at 38% ownership. So really, really digging the Packers receivers. I think if I had to rank them, it'd probably be Wicks number 1, Dobbs number 2, Golden number 3. So kind of ranking in order of price. And then Heath, I think, is viable, kind of a fine play, not a priority by any stretch. He has not been totally involved. He's kind of like the classic backup tight end play that we talk about. Again, just 13% route participation last week, 21% the week prior to that. You can hope for a touchdown, but not a priority. Savion Williams, maybe gets a random carry here or there. He's only 800. He's gotten at least 1 carry this year. I think he's gotten a couple. Viable, but probably not going to get a ton of work. Again, I'll pull up the snap share report. So Heath, 28% of snaps last week. Where's Savion? Ooh, just 10% of snaps last week. So not a ton of work there. Not a priority. He's 800. Maybe he could get like a goal line kind of trick play where he gets involved. So it could work out where he scores a touchdown. But at 800, I don't think he's going to get enough carries to really pay off his price tag, most likely. So certainly not a priority, but somebody that in a 150 set, I'll probably want to get a little bit of exposure to. Cowboys, again, don't have CeeDee Lamb. George Pickens at these ownership numbers, like hard not to be somewhat interested in the top receiver on the team at 22% flex ownership and 6% captain ownership. Again, I'm kind of leaning away from the Cowboys in general. At these numbers, I probably do match the field at 22 and 6%. RG has it at 28% in the flex, 7% at captain, which is, I think, fine. Maybe I come in right around those numbers. So 35% total Pickens exposure seems fine to me. He's not a priority for me. So I think I'd like to have at least 20%. Like as long as I have about 20% wicks across my portfolio, I think that's enough for me. Uh, I don't feel that I need to get up to 40%. Like I want to make sure that I have some, because I think he can really hurt you if you don't have some really, really good receiver. I think he's talented. Playing with Dak, maybe a bigger priority now with CeeDee Lamb out. The coach speak actually kind of interesting around George Pickens, because it kind of suggests the opposite this week from, was it this week? Yeah, on the 24th. Brian Schottenheimer on whether all the George Pickens plays get pushed to the top of the call sheet with CeeDee Lamb out. He said, well, we add more rows for more guys. Jake Ferguson's going to have a big section this week. He's playing really well right now. Jalen Tolbert will have to step up if CeeDee Lamb doesn't play. Kevontae Turpin will have his. George is always going to be a focal point of what we're doing, whether CeeDee is out there or not. George's role doesn't really change. It's more some of the other guys around him that will change. I thought that was kind of interesting, that this is a situation where he doesn't really anticipate that the role is going to change that much for George Pickens. I think he's just saying that George Pickens was already a focal point of the offense. Like, it was kind of those two. It's the other guys who are going to have to step up, and George Pickens will just kind of retain a really strong role. But I did think it was sort of interesting that he's saying, like, he's not like, yeah, George needs to step up, we're going to be targeting him a ton. It's more like the other guys need to step up. George is just going to keep the role that he has had. Ultimately, I think I probably want to be 30 to 35% George Pickens. I'll want to have 5% a captain, not be too far off from the field, because he, again, can bury you if you don't play him. But he's not my biggest priority of the spend ups. So again, if I end up a little bit underweight to the field, I would be okay with that as I'm trying to get to other players. Tolbert and Turpin. Tolbert is 3,800, Turpin 4,400. Tolbert with 34% projected ownership, Turpin at 38% projected ownership. Both, I think, are going to see bigger roles. I think in particular, Tolbert, I'm expecting to see a bigger role with no CeeDee Lamb out there. Here, actually, I'm going to bring up just week 3. Because we had CeeDee Lamb went down in the first quarter of week 3. We ended up seeing Tolbert ran 87% of the snaps and saw 6 targets in that game. So he was seemingly the biggest beneficiary of CeeDee Lamb being out, kind of had the bigger wide receiver role. Turpin, interesting in his own right, 68% routes, 3 targets, and then he's got 5 carries through 2 weeks. So he's been a little bit involved in the running game, maybe without CeeDee Lamb, and against a tough defense, they try to do some more of that kind of tricky stuff, just because more classic offenses maybe don't work against the Packers. So maybe they're a little bit more inclined to be tricky with the offensive play calling. So I think they're both a little bit interesting, kind of, again, depending on ownership. So not huge priorities against this really tough Packers defense, but Turpin coming in at 22% at RG, Tolbert coming in at 19.5%. There, I would probably be with or above the field at the numbers we have at Run the Sims. I think I'll be underweight to the field. So I think probably somewhere between 25 and 30% of each of Tolbert and Turpin, combined ownership, flex, and captain feels about right to me. I think that they are both fine plays that have some upside, probably need a touchdown to really pay it off. If Tolbert sees 6 targets and catches 5 of them for 50 yards, maybe that's enough at 3,800. But they're not my biggest priorities of the lower priced options. I prefer Wicks over both of them, for example, if they came in at the same ownership. So ultimately, I think I probably end up under these numbers, but over the numbers where RG has them at 23% or whatever ownership across flex and captain. I probably come in over that number is where I'd like to be, and under this number. I think we had some interesting coach speak there as well, on top of what I just read about roles changing. Let's see. Brian Schottenheimer on the 26th said, Kevontae Turpin is the Steve Nash of our football team. There's something about the positive energy that Turp brings. It's a tough matchup, but I think that they're both fine plays. Maybe we play 25, 30%. Can I give a core for the showdown? Yeah, I can give kind of a core after I go through all the positions. And then I do think Ryan Flournoy is actually playable here. He's only 2,000 projected for 1% ownership. Again, we can look at The route share report, Flournoy up to 34% in that last game. That's enough that I think he is playable for the Cowboy. Like not a huge priority. I'd like to get to maybe 3% Flournoy, but I do think in a 150 set, he's somebody you should probably have at least a little bit of exposure to. And I don't think we need to go to any of the other Cowboys receivers, but those four I think all look decent. All right, let's move on to tight ends. All right. Yeah, that is the Steve Nash comp is surprised me a little bit, caught me off guard. All right, tight ends. So as we're talking about cores, I think Tucker Kraft is a core play for me this week. I think it's Josh Jacobs is my biggest priority. Tucker Kraft might be my second biggest priority. He's 8,600, pretty fairly priced, but more expensive than any of the receivers. 25% projected flex ownership, 7% projected captain ownership. The role is honestly maybe not as good so far this year as I would have thought. I don't know if everybody else had the same impression going in, but here I'm gonna bring up all games. So far through 3 weeks, Tucker Kraft just 14 targets, less than 5 targets per game. He had that blow up game against the Commanders. He scored a touchdown in week 1 on limited opportunities, but really he just has that one great game so far through 3 weeks. 72.7% route participation, again 14 targets. Like it's a fine role, but it's not really a great role. It is actually, I didn't look at the schedule adjusted page for wide receivers, but it's a lot more of the same. It's the best possible matchup for receivers against Dallas, and it is 6th worst matchup for receivers against Green Bay. So that's kind of the story of the day, is that it's tough matchup for the Cowboys, really great matchup for the Packers across the board. And that carries over into the tight ends to an extent. So we have, it is a great matchup, 5th best possible matchup against the Cowboys for tight ends. It's actually a better matchup for tight ends than other positions against the Packers. But so Tucker Kraft, again, just 14 targets on the year. I think this is kind of just a gut. I think he's a really good player. I think he was also kind of banged up coming into the last game. So I think that might have, like, we didn't think he was going to play that game. It was kind of a surprise that he ended up playing last week. That might have affected his role a little bit last week. And then the coach speak I really like on Tucker Kraft. On the 25th, so this is this week, offense coordinator Adam Stanovich said, if we're going to be the best that we can be, we got to get Tucker Kraft the ball for sure. There's no doubt about that. He's just one of those guys that makes plays when he has the ball in his hands. So they, kind of that's what the eye test tells me. It's what the offensive coordinator is saying. They want to get the ball to Tucker Kraft. So I want to play Tucker Kraft. I think that he is a strong play here. Obviously, all the receivers in great matchups as well, but he's the most consistent part of their offense. They're talking about getting him the ball. I think that I want to lean in there. Maybe it's partially just the uncertainty around the wide receivers. Just, who do you want to prioritize the receivers around the receivers makes me kind of lean towards just going to Tucker Kraft, but just paying up a little bit more for the player that I think is, again, I think he leads the team in targets, right? He leads the team in targets through 3 weeks. I'm going to lean in on Tucker Kraft. Believe the coach speak. Fall for the coach speak potentially. We'll see. Maybe they're misleading us, but I think he's a very strong play at 25 and 7% ownership. I think after Josh Jacobs, Tucker Kraft is probably my second favorite captain option on this slate. RG has him at 23% flex ownership. 9%. So they have him a little bit more at captain. And then Luke Musgrave, John Fitzpatrick, Musgrave 1,600, John Fitzpatrick 1,200. Let's see, were they running routes last week? Let's see, route share report. 13% Fitzpatrick, 10% Luke Musgrave. I think just the classic hope for a touchdown if you play them. Probably not going to be a big part of my portfolio because we've got some better low-priced options, but players that maybe in a 150 set, if I get to some Musgrave or Fitzpatrick, I'm okay with it. On the Cowboys side, Jake Ferguson, maybe my favorite option of the Cowboys. Pickens is, close, but I think it is Ferguson. It's a little bit cheaper than Pickens. He's been kind of a big focal point of the offense for the Cowboys so far. 8,400. Again, I prefer Kraft. They're about the same price tag. Kraft is just 200 more. So Kraft is my priority of the two of them. But you also need to play a Cowboy in every lineup. You need to play players from both teams. And I like the Packers a lot more in general. So Ferguson at 8,400. I think I'm going to get to a fair amount. He is kind of expensive. Here's where RG has him at again. They've got him at 9% captain. That's interesting. More than I thought. And then in the flex, they got him at 21%. So a little bit lower, 10% lower ownership projected in the flex for Jake Ferguson. Obviously, that kind of skews my thought going in, because that was, again, the first ownership that I looked at. So this is a little bit higher than it was. I still think that I like it fine. I'm a little bit less enthusiastic when he's getting 40% ownership, but I still think that it is okay. I think that's not too high on Jake Ferguson. And again, this is one of the rare spots where it's not an awful matchup against the Packers so far on the season in terms of schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed. It's about the ninth best matchup or so for tight ends against the Packers defense. And on the season, he has 32 targets on 71.2% route participation. We might see him get a little bit of a bigger role with CeeDee Lamb out. We also might see the defense focus on him a little bit more with CeeDee Lamb out. So there's kind of a wide range of outcomes, I think, for Jake Ferguson. Honestly, could be a huge dud at 8,400. So if he's getting 40% ownership, as much as I say he's somebody I really like, I don't actually think I'm going to get above that. I think I'm probably going to be pretty close to 84% because I do want to mix in. I'll mix in some Tolbert, Turpin, Pickens, a lot of other Cowboys players. And ultimately, I think I'm going to have a lot of lineups that are pretty Packer-centric. So not actually that huge of a priority. Then you've got Luke Schoonmaker and Brevin Spann-Ford. On the season, Schoonmaker 4 targets on 18% route participation. Spann-Ford 2 targets on 6.5% route participation. Looking at how that has changed over time in the route participation report, Schoonmaker up to 21%. So that was his best route participation in that last game after CeeDee Lamb got hurt. Spann-Ford 6.4%. I think Schoonmaker is, again, just a fine backup tight end play. Maybe he has, they could give him extra work after practicing without CeeDee Lamb. Maybe they want to do more 12 personnel, that kind of stuff. He's only 600. So yeah, I think a fine play, but not a huge priority for me. I think I want to make sure that I get to at least a little bit of Luke Schoonmaker. If I get to some Brevin Spann-Ford, I'm okay with it. I don't think I'm going to force it. Ultimately, I think they're both just kind of fine plays. All right, moving on to defenses and kickers. Wait, Mateo says they vocalized they wanted to be less run heavy this season. You're talking about the Packers? Yeah, but they haven't been really. I mean, maybe they've been a little bit less, but I think they just really trust Josh Jacobs. So I think they're continuing to be pretty run heavy. Kickers and defenses, I'm going to like them quite a bit. I'm going to play a lot of kickers and defenses. So again, if we're talking about the core, I think the Packers defense is going to be a pretty big part of my core. I think they're just really tough defense. And while I think Dak Prescott is really good, I generally like Dak Prescott, like playing him. I think this defense is just, they've been really good against some pretty strong offenses. So I think the 5,400 Packers defense is going to bring down the ownership a little bit because they're pretty expensive here, and it's just going to make me like them that much better. So I think the Packers defense kind of a big priority for me. Of course, we've got the Micah Parsons playing again in Dallas. That's kind of a fun narrative. But even regardless of narrative, I just think that they have a really strong defense that should go a little bit under-owned here. I think RG actually has them higher owned, and I still like them at higher projected ownership. They've got them at no, that's Cowboys. They've got them at 20% projected ownership. So they have significantly higher ownership going to the defense, and I still like them at that ownership level. I think they're pretty relatively safe. I think they're pretty likely to put up at least like 6 fantasy points, and I think there's outcomes where they put up 20, 25 fantasy points, depending on how the game goes. So I like the Packers defense quite a bit. Brandon McManus at 23-1. I actually think that's pretty good also. should score a lot of points. On the Cowboys side, Brandon Aubrey, 17.1% looks good to me at 5,600. Again, you have to play at least one player from both teams in every lineup. I think those are fair numbers. Cowboys defense even at 5-1, 3,400. Maybe they get after it. They're playing against Micah Parsons. Maybe they're extra motivated to show that they are okay without Micah Parsons. But really, it's not about narrative. It's just 5% ownership at 3,400 in a chaotic game like football looks really good to me. I think I want to have more like 10% of the Cowboys defense. They were actually projected for higher ownership at RG. If they come in at 16%, I don't necessarily need to get above that number. I'd be okay getting to 16%, but that's not like a priority. Like I need to get above weight at 16%. So if we're talking core, so that's all the positions, the players that I think are, that I want to make sure that I am at or above the field, it would be Josh Jacobs, Tucker Kraft, Packers defense are kind of the top three for me. Jordan Love kind of in that second tier, along with Dontavian Wicks. Jalen Tolbert, Jake Ferguson. Maybe Jake Ferguson, because if he's getting this high of ownership, he doesn't quite make it in there. But I think Jalen Tolbert is kind of in that second tier for me. Yeah, and then Jake Ferguson not far behind. And then I want to make sure that I get to some like George Pickens. They're kind of another tier below would be George Pickens, Miles Sanders, Javonte Williams, maybe Dak Prescott, Kevontae Turpin. But yeah, like the top tier for me would be Josh Jacobs, Tucker Kraft, Packers defense, and then it's like Jordan Love is still I really like. Probably want to get at least close to the field on Jordan Love, Dontavian Wicks. Actually, a lot of the rest of the Packers receivers not far behind that group. Also, along with on the Cowboys side, I would say Jalen Tolbert and Jake Ferguson here. Kevontae Turpin not far behind that group either. Yeah. All right. And then I'll build some lineups here and we can kind of look at what how the lineups are looking as I build them. Oh, let's go. Rims and Tim says, ended in 19th place in the DK Millie. Thanks for the tremble call last night on Outside the Box. I can't take any credit for that. That was all Scott, but that's awesome to hear. Appreciate the super chat. All right. Let's do it. Let's go run some sims. I think I'm playing 196 entries tonight. Let me download this. Oh, and I know some of you will want me to look at FanDuel, so let me I'll get the sims running and then I'll take a look at FanDuel. So to start for running the sims, I don't change anything in the inputs before my first run. I just go to the settings. I'm going to put it at 15,000 lineups, 15,000 contest field, 10,000 sims. I'm going to do the top heavy payout structure, and then shady portfolio diversifier up to 196. I can get there, right? Come on. Oh man, I cannot get it to 196. There we go. They just got to let me enter the number. All right, I'm going to click the SimRunner Pro button. This will take a few minutes. While that's running, I'm going to take a brief look at FanDuel. We've got another 2-gamer tomorrow night, which kind of fun, but also from a content perspective, more work. Wish they'd stop putting all this extra work in there. Just put it all in one slate. Much easier for me. All right, on the FanDuel side, at MVP, here Tucker Kraft really stands out at MVP because he's way cheaper than the other option that I really like. So I really like Tucker Kraft at MVP on FanDuel in particular, where it's just 13,500 getting 9%. I like Josh Jacobs quite a bit, but he's expensive and getting ownership. So still one of my favorite MVP options, but not necessarily more than the field there. Whereas Tucker Kraft to me is kind of a priority. I actually think George Pickens looks really good at MVP at 7%. The Packers receivers here. So Golden is just 9,900 or less than 5% ownership. Looks really good. Here he's closer in price to Wicks and Dobbs and not getting that much more ownership. So I would say of the Packers receivers, it's a little bit different on FanDuel than DraftKings. I think my preference of order here would be Golden number one, followed by probably Wicks and then Dobbs because of the price tags and the ownership not being all that different. But I actually think they all look like pretty strong plays at MVP on FanDuel. And Javonte getting kind of a lot of ownership there. I actually think Jordan Love looks like a pretty strong play at 15.5% ownership, but he's also fairly expensive. So yeah, my favorite probably is just Tucker Kraft, followed by the receivers. Followed by Josh Jacobs, really. I just still think he's the best play. But if you're trying to find somebody contrarian, I really like the three receivers. I think the Packers defense here at 1.5% ownership stands out as a really strong play at MVP. That almost worked out in that last game. Not a ton went right on Thursday Night Football. I didn't think. I thought it was a lot of stuff I got wrong. Like all the touchdowns essentially were players that I was like not that enthusiastic about. The one thing that almost went really well is I really liked, I don't remember who it was now, but I really liked the defenses at MVP. And it was looking like they were potentially going to be the highest scoring players on the slate. And then that fell apart in the last couple of minutes of the game. But I think that's another, we can go back to that. I think the Packers at MVP on FanDuel looks like a really strong play. Yeah, I think those are kind of the priorities. So I'll start with Kraft, the receivers. Obviously, Jacobs Love I like quite a bit. You can go to a little bit of Dak Prescott, George Pickens. I would mix them in if you're playing a lot of lineups. But yeah, my top priority if I was just playing one MVP, it would be Tucker Kraft. Probably Josh Jacobs would be number two, and then I get into the contrarian, or maybe Jordan Love would be number three, and then the contrarian Packers receivers. And actually, I might get to the Packers defense even before the Packers receivers. Build a lineup where you assume the Packers defense is the nuts. And then I'd probably play Josh Jacobs in the flex in that lineup most of the time. In the flex, Jordan Love getting a lot of ownership, Dak Prescott getting a lot of ownership. I'm okay with it. Just make sure your lineup makes sense. Again, going to love the Packers defense at 18.5% ownership. Kickers look fine. Here, Javonte at 18% ownership, pretty reasonable there. I would certainly want to play some Javonte at 18% ownership. A lot of low ownership here. Golden at 17%. It's just really spread out, which I guess makes sense in some sense because we have just a lot of like pretty good plays. If Josh Jacobs actually comes in at 15% ownership, that would be like a smash. Just play all the Josh Jacobs. He's projected for 20% at captain, so it'd be 35% total ownership. Yeah, I would want to be way over 35% total ownership on Josh Jacobs on FanDuel. Kraft at 14% looks great. And not that hard to get there with Wicks being 6,000, Golden 6,600. A lot of pretty good value on FanDuel. I'm going to look at my sims. All right, we're diversifying payouts now, so we're getting close. Let me check in. Yeah, I like Ferguson a fair amount too. Like he's getting enough ownership that now I'm not as enthusiastic as I was earlier this morning, but still looks good. Appreciate that you like my voice. ABC XYZ. All right. Top lineup here, and you can see here I'm not getting my lineups in order of EV because I'm using the Shady Portfolio Optimizer tool, and it's not going to give me just all the top EV lineups. It's giving me the best portfolio of lineups. I've gone over this enough that you probably understand at this point. Top lineup here is Josh Jacobs in the captain spot, Brandon Aubrey, Dak Prescott, George Pickens, Jake Ferguson, Luke Schoonmaker. Way too many Cowboys for my liking, but we get to 50,000 salary. And that one, how duped is that going to be? Less than one dupe for that one. I guess if that's what it takes to get Josh Jacobs in the captain spot, maybe I just need to accept it. I suspect I'm going to be making some changes to my player pool. Second lineup, Jalen Tolbert in the captain spot, Brandon Aubrey, Dak Prescott, George Pickens, Jake Ferguson, Josh Jacobs. Again, this is often what a lot of pros will play. So I don't think it's a bad idea if you want to just play the lineups that Run the Sims give you. I think it's probably going to be winning over time to just play these lineups. A lot of the pros that you talk to are going to, they're often cheering for the underdog. If you're like, I'm in some discords with some pro players, they're always like cheering for the underdog. They'll be cheering for the Cowboys tonight, I'm sure, just cheering for things to go different than what the field thinks is going to happen. I think the field, like myself, generally is going to think, hey, it's probably going to be the Packers tonight. They have the much better matchup. Everybody kind of sees that. I play different than a lot of the pros that I know. So I will play a lot more Packers than they will and get different in some different ways. But this makes a lot of sense. This is kind of the types of lineups that they will be playing are the lineups that I'm getting here in Run the Sims. So I think it would be totally viable to just play their lineups, play the, if you're playing 150, just take the 150 using the Shady Portfolio Optimizer. You don't necessarily need to make any changes like I will be doing to get to some of the players I like better. But just wanted to point out that this is like, these look like a lot of the lineups that people that I know are really good at DFS will play. So they're probably strong lineups. Third lineup, Josh Jacobs. Now here's one that looks a little bit closer to my kind of lineup. Josh Jacobs with Brandon Aubrey, Brandon McManus, Green Bay Packers defense, Jordan Love, and Romeo Doubs. Leaves 1,200 on the table. That one gets a little bit more different by just leaving salary on the table while playing a lot of players I like. Fourth lineup, we got Josh Jacobs, Brandon Aubrey, Dontavian Wicks, Packers defense, Jordan Love, Romeo Doubs. So those two are actually only one player apart, McManus versus Wicks, and it leaves an extra 1,200 on the table. So we're avoiding some dupes by leaving salary on the table. Jordan Love in the captain spot looks how I would want a Jordan Love captain lineup to look. It's got Wicks, Golden, Dobbs, and Kraft just mega stacked, leaving 3,400 on the table. Brandon Aubrey on the other side. So in this lineup, you need Brandon Aubrey to outscore everybody up to 3,400 more expensive than him. I think that would include Jake Ferguson. I don't remember the exact prices, but my guess is that would include Jake Ferguson, maybe not Javonte Williams. But I think it's totally viable that Brandon Aubrey could outscore Jake Ferguson and actually would not need to outscore any of the Packers in that range because you need a Cowboys player in all of your lineups. You would need all of these Packers to outscore everybody up to 3,400 more expensive than them. But this looks like a total. Like this is absolutely the type of lineup that I love here. Jordan Love onslaughted, just Brandon Aubrey coming back, leaving a lot of salary on the table. Would not be shocking to see these being the Packers. And it doesn't have Josh Jacobs in it. So that's the one part that you'd have to be cautious about is can all these players outscore Josh Jacobs? And actually, I don't know if you could fit Josh Jacobs into this lineup. 3,400 left over. Actually, let me look at that. I don't remember the price tags. Jacobs is 10,800. I think they're all cheaper than 7,400. Yeah, so actually, except for Kraft. So you need Kraft to outscore Josh Jacobs. He's the only one with that lineup that actually needs to, and obviously Jordan Love, but Jordan Love in this lineup we're assuming is it's an onslaught. So it looks good to me. You don't actually need that many things to go that crazy out of hand, and it's not going to be duped at all, leaving that much salary on the table. So I love that lineup. These are looking good. All right, player exposures. I'll go position by position here, starting with quarterbacks. Getting to a fair amount of Jordan Love and Dak Prescott, but it's not like out of hand. I'm getting around 50% of each, so I'm fine with that. I do prefer Love to Prescott, but this is not far enough off from where I'd like it to be that I would necessarily make any changes on account of these. I wouldn't. Yeah, I don't feel the need to get more or less of either of them. Running back, I'm getting to a ton of Josh Jacobs. Love to see that getting to over 80% Jacobs. He's a priority for me. I think that looks great. I'm under the field on Javonte Williams. I think that is right in line with where I'd like to be. I'm not getting a much Miles Sanders. That scares me a little bit. But again, the biggest reason I like Miles Sanders is you need to play somebody from the Cowboys. And if I don't need to get there, I'll look at my other exposures and see if I'm getting like 70% of Brandon Aubrey. I think that's the spot where I'd maybe say, hey, I'll move some of that Aubrey to Miles Sanders, diversify my own portfolio that way. But that looks okay. I do think I want to get to some Emmanuel Wilson and Chris Brooks and even a little bit of Hunter Lipke potentially. So I think that's one way that I'm going to make a slight difference here to get to some of the other running backs beyond the starters. Wide receivers, getting to nearly 50% George Pickens. I don't hate that. He's not my biggest priority. Maybe I'd be okay getting away from some of this as I try to get to other players, but I'm not mad at getting to 50% George Pickens if I can without sacrificing elsewhere. Dontavian Wicks, I'm right at 40%. I'm actually playing over the field at captain, under the field in the flex here. Looks good to me. Golden, I think I want a little bit more than this of Golden. He just has that huge play potential. This might be a spot where they finally get him going. I think I want a little bit more Dobbs. See, I'm under the field here on both Turpin and Tolbert. I'm still getting double digits, so I'm not like that upset about it. And I'm getting into a 10% floor now, which looks good to me. I think if I can, I would like to get to a little bit more of Turpin, Tolbert. Honestly, like all of these receivers outside of Wicks and Pickens. I might want a little bit. I'd be okay getting a little bit less of Pickens and Wicks. I'm okay with where I'm at there. I think every receiver outside of those two, I would like a little bit more than I'm getting here. Tight ends, getting to 43% Ferguson, so I'm actually over the field there, getting to just 28% Kraft. So again, this is where I'm like, I am going to have to sacrifice some ownership from somebody else to get to the players I like, and I want to get to more Kraft here, particularly in the captain spot. Getting to a ton of Schoonmaker, probably more than I need. Not getting to any Musgrave. I don't really care about these other tight ends that much. If I get there, I'm okay with it, but they're not priorities for me. Okay, as I suspected, I'm getting to a ton of Brandon Aubrey. I think I can come down on this. Oh man, the phrasing again. I just can't help myself with the phrasing. I think I can bring down the ownership that I'm getting to, my exposure to Brandon Aubrey, and I would be okay with that. I'm getting to 75%. I would like to spread this exposure out to some other players in my portfolio. McManus, I'm getting to 15%. I would probably like to get above that number. But yeah, I can see here. I needed to dock Brandon Aubrey's projection just a little bit because I want to spread out some of that exposure. And then defenses, I'm getting to 27% Packers defense. Wouldn't mind getting some at captain, and then not getting too much of the Cowboys. I think I'd like to get a little bit more there. So the biggest thing I think I need to do is bring down the kicker projection a little bit, get to more of those receivers and the backup running backs. Okay, I'm going to go. Actually, let me download these lineups first. Make sure I have some lineups in there. The funny thing is, I've been aware of this being tricky phrasing for me. Like I don't know how to say it. It sounds vaguely sexual, and nobody's called me out on it for like years of me struggling with how to say this. And now that somebody finally did call me out on it, now it's in my head more so. All right. So I've got some lineups in. I'm going to change my inputs. I'll check in on chat before I change my inputs here. See if we have questions. Is the main slate done? Then I bet they will. Let's see. Would you play Ferguson or Williams? More often, I'll play Ferguson. I think he's my bigger priority than Javonte. Are we playing both quarterbacks? I mean, I'm going to have some of both of them, but I'm prioritizing Love over Dak. Agent NDT. I don't know the answer to this. Go into Run the Sims Discord and ask them. Yeah, I have not considered. So go ahead and ask them. Don't know about the funds. Let's see. Any favorite props? I haven't looked at the props. Sorry. Could you see Tucker and Wick scoring a touchdown? Absolutely. They could both score touchdowns. All right. Let me change some things here. We've got 20 minutes here. I forgot. This is a later start on Sunday Night Football. Let me make some changes here. So the first thing I need to do is I'm going to bring down the projection on Brandon. Oh, he's got an 11.3 project. I'm going to bring it down to 10. Kind of want to see if like just what that will do, but let me just make a couple quick changes. Going to bring up the Packers sack rate to 7%. Also going to bring up the Cowboys sack rate to 6%. Already getting to a fair amount of Josh Jacobs. I might move up. I'm going to move up by Wilson and Brooks a little bit. So I kind of want more of all of the Packers. So I guess I'm just going to have to change team level stuff. I'm going to change the point scored to 28, move the pace up to 61. I guess if I do that, I'll keep the rush rate the exact same, move up Emmanuel Wilson's rushing market share to 11%. Chris Brooks up to 2%. I should click the Smart Adjust button. Let's see. There we go. Brooks up to 2% touchdown market share. We'll see. That might be too much, but we'll see. Oh yeah, I moved that up too much. All right, we'll do this. That looks fine. Hopefully that's not too much. I think because I moved up the points scored, I'll get to a little bit more of, and I moved down Aubrey's projection. I'll get to a little bit more of the receivers here, and Tucker Kraft, I would think. I'm actually going to move up Kraft a little bit here to just 19% market share. I'm going to click normalize. On the Cowboys, I wasn't getting to much. Was I getting to much Miles Sanders? Actually, let me double check that. No, not getting to any Miles Sanders or Lipke. All right. Maybe I will now that I move down the McManus projection, but I'm going to move up Miles Sanders just to a 25% market share. I should smart adjust. I'm going to move Dak down to 4% rushing market share and move. Wait, where am I at now? 100%. Okay, they're good. I'm going to give Lipke 1% receiving market share. Also need to be looking at the ownership numbers. So these are both Tolbert and Turpin are getting higher ownership numbers than they're getting at RG. I'm going to move these numbers down to 25% each. What else? Ferguson, move him down to 28%. Flex ownership. Let's try that. And click normalize. Yeah, I'm going to see what happens when I run it now. You can change the settings to just 10,000 lineups because I wasn't getting over that last time. Now I'm going to run the sims again. Let's see. Joanne going 5-1 Dallas. I mean, that's what the sims were giving me, a fair amount of 5-1 Dallas at the top. So I think that is going to be, Marco says good luck. It's going to be 2.2% owned. I assume that's from Establish the Run, getting that number. That's why a lot of the pros play it. It's just like playing a totally different type of lineup, hoping the game goes in a completely different direction. Makes sense. That's I'm totally a viable way to play. Do you guys like Kraft captain, Love, Dobbs, Green Bay defense, Williams, Aubrey? Yeah, I mean that sounds. If you're using the full salary cap, I could see that being duped a fair amount. But if you're leaving a little bit of salary on the table, Kraft captain is like slightly. It's not even that unique. So I would be worried about, depending on how much salary you're using, I might be worried a little bit about dupes with that lineup. But it should project well. Looks good. Anthony asked, Love, Jacobs, or Kraft captain? I'm only playing one lineup. If you're only playing one lineup, I would probably go with Kraft. It's between Jacobs and Kraft is probably where I'd start, but probably go Kraft for the lower ownership there. Man, I don't know. That's tough because I think Jacobs just is. It might just be Jacobs. Honestly, I think I'm changing my mind. It's between those two, but it's actually probably just Jacobs, and then try to get different elsewhere in your lineup because I think Jacobs is probably going to smash here. Fitzpatrick captain. That is I don't think I'm getting there. But if he scores a touchdown, maybe. Aubrey or Sanders, last man in. Probably Aubrey. We saw how well he was simming out. I think Aubrey's a strong play. I don't want 75% of him, but he's pretty great play. Really good kicker. The worry, of course, is like if they get behind, they stop kicking, but that's not usually a worry until pretty late in the game anyway. Have we gotten our payouts? Doesn't look like it. No payouts yet from DraftKings. I have not been tracking the Dog Bowl. Did any of our guys get home in the Dog Bowl qualifier? I saw we had some in the Discord. We had some sweats, but I don't know how they ended up doing. I'm trying to find it now. Completed. Yeah, we did just get payments from DraftKings. So if you're not already entered, now's the time. Jump in there. I'm not finding my Dog Bowl qualifier now. Daily results. Oh, here it is. Sunday main slate. That's disappointing. None of our guys got home. Some too much scoring in those late games. Math ended up in 18th place. I know Steven Urbanik was ended up in 21st. Top value play, Jermaine. Probably Dontavian Wicks. I think I'll have to let me think. I mean, or depending on what you consider value, it could be the Packers defense. But I don't know if they're cheap enough. Probably Dontavian Wicks, unless you mean like under 2,000 or something. Then I would have to think about that. Sanders is up there. Oh, actually, Ryan Flournoy at 2,000. If you're thinking like under 2,000 or under, it would be Flournoy for me probably. The floor is like pretty clearly 0 for Flournoy, but 34% route participation in that last game. All right, calculating payouts. Might be able to do one more sim run after this, but we'll see. I would like to get one more in. Under 3,200. Yeah, I think it would be under 3,200. Like I prefer Miles Sanders. I think he's more likely to score real fantasy points than Ryan Flournoy. So yeah, I guess at 3,200 it would probably be Miles Sanders number one there, because I don't think any of the other like strong receiver options. I think Turpin and Tolbert are both more expensive than that. The starters for the Packers all more expensive. Yeah, so I think it would be Miles Sanders at 3,200 or under, followed by Flournoy. Reminder, please like the video if you haven't already done so, and subscribe to the YouTube channel, trying to get to 6,000 subscribers by the end of the NFL season. I should also remind you, if you're not already signed up for Run the Sims, the product that I'm using here, you can use promo code Neil to get 10% off your first payment. This product that I'm using is the SimRunner Pro product, but they have an optimizer. They've got a lot of different options there. You can also, I think, find a link to their products in the description of this video on YouTube. Also, if you're not in the Flannelverse Discord, it is free to join. There's also a link to that in the description of this video. What else can I shout out while I'm waiting for this sim to run? That's it. Mike says Dak on the field. Dak on TV says he's looking to hit Pickens down the field and Ferguson in the flats. Kind of expected, but that's still good to hear. Here's the other shout out I can do is if you're interested in a Flannelverse hat, you can just use your Flannelverse avatar where it is possible. Win $1,000 or more in DFS or a draft game. Use the screenshot, give a shout out to myself or Mathology13 or Flannelversity on social media, and then send me your mailing address. I'll send you a hat. I'll also be doing another hat giveaway at 6,000 subscribers. Just did one for 5,000 subscribers. If we get to 6,000 this NFL season, I'll do another hat giveaway. All right, this is taking a while tonight. Let's hope we get there. How much salary left is too much? I would think like more than 6,000 would be too much tonight. Who's your favorite captain overall for large field GPPs? It's still, even for large field, it would be between Christopher. Thank you for your address, but you gotta do all the other steps first. You gotta win one first. Favorite captain, it would still be either, I think it's Jacobs #1, Kraft #2. If you want to go like super contrarian, then I think somebody like Wicks fits in a contrarian captain lineup. The Packers receivers, I think in general, a little bit low owned there. Packers defense actually on DraftKings also is a fine contrarian play. Love or Knicks on the Sunday to Monday slate. Probably love there. Well, they both have great matchups. I guess I'm assuming that Denver's going to run more. I think I'd go love. Love, Kraft, and pick a receiver. Yeah, Carlos, not my day either. Oh, delay. Okay. I wondered if there was something going on here. Hopefully I don't lose all of my stuff when I refresh. I think I'm going to. All right, let's see. Yep, lost my stuff here. So I'm just going to run real quick. Try to think of what I had before. So I'm going to move Packers up to 28 points, pace of 61, sack rate up to 7%. McManus, I guess I can keep him at 8.8. I'm going to move Brandon Aubrey down to projection of 10. Cowboys defense up to 6% sack rate. I'm going to move, let's see, keep the rush rate the same. Move up. I'm going to click the Smart Adjust button. Emmanuel Wilson to 11% rush share. Chris Brooks to 3% rush share. Kraft up to 19% receiving share. I think I can get rid of some of. I'll keep everybody else the same. Actually, I don't want any Malik Heath, so I'll move him to 0. and then click normalize. Cowboys side, I wanted a little bit more of Miles Sanders. I'm going to move Dak rushing market share down to 4%. Actually, should smart adjust that. Whatever. I'll move Miles Sanders up to 26%. Ferguson down to 27% ownership there, maybe 25. Turpin and Tolbert both down a little bit, 24% each. Projected ownership. Also going to move Miles Sanders down to just slightly. All right, I'm going to normalize. In the interest of time, I'm not going to get this in. Let's see. Settings, 10,000 lineups, large field, top heavy, portfolio, 196. All right, that's unfortunate. Probably not getting to the lineups I want to play tonight. But we'll see here. It's going so fast earlier. Yeah, appreciate you guys liking the video. Thanks, Dan, for helping out. Tolbert or Sanders? Probably Tolbert. I don't remember exactly how much Ferguson. I think he's projected for like 9% captain ownership. Well, the good news is if I don't get to the lineups I wanted to play, I'm just going to get to the lineups that the Sims gave me, which might be better anyway. So not really the end of the world. Calculating payouts, we might be getting close. Yeah, Golden Captain looks strong. Golden or Dobbs, last man in. If you're using the full salary cap with Golden, then I would go down to Dobbs. Otherwise, if you're still leaving a little bit of salary on the table, I prefer. I don't know if I prefer Golden. It's pretty close, but Golden, if you're leaving any salary on the table. If you need to play Dobbs to leave some salary on the table, then I would play Dobbs. Assuming this is a tournament. All right, we're not going to make it in time here. Calculating payouts. Still got to go to the portfolio optimizer. We'll see. We'll see what I would have, and then I can regret or cheer that I don't have what I tried to play. Calculating payouts. All right, it is lock. Did not get there. So I essentially just have the defaults without any changes. So we'll see here. All right. Thank you, Marco. You'll buy me a flannel if you win $30. I'd appreciate that. All right. Sick one in the other night down to the wire. Yeah, I've done that several times. Several times I've got it down to the wire and just barely got it in. Tonight just didn't quite get there. Had a timeout there. I don't know if it's my internet or what the deal is. Appreciate you, loyal Rican. That's kind of you. I will be back tomorrow. I'll be back for 2 shows tomorrow. First with Adam at 12:30 or so Eastern. We'll break down the 2-game slate, and then again about 2 hours before the slate starts. I don't remember exactly what time I started last time, but I'll break down the 2-game slate again, and then do just a brief on both showdown slates as well tomorrow. So I'll be back there. Again, appreciate all of you for hanging out. Thanks and good luck tonight. Let's win some money. Feel free to join the Flaniverse Discord if you want to sweat in a Discord with people. I'm going to get out of here. These are the lineups that I would have played, but I'm not going to be able to. All right. Thank you guys. I will see you tomorrow. Good luck tonight.